So it's 2025 now, and given that there are tons and tons of mice and keyboard options out there, is it still worth paying that extra Apple tax for the Magic Keyboard, Magic Mouse and Magic Trackpad? I've spent more than 4 years with the Magic Keyboard and 6 months with the Magic Trackpad and Magic Mouse. So in this video, I want to share my honest long-term experience with you and let you know which one of these is truly magical and which ones you should avoid. So without further delay, let's jump into the video. Now let's talk about the experience for each of these peripherals. If you want an external keyboard that has the exact same typing experience as the MacBook keyboard, you can close the video now, go to the Apple Store and give Apple your credit card. Because no other keyboards I've reviewed on this channel was able to replicate the MacBook keyboard as well as the Magic Keyboard. Although the MX Keys Mini from Logitech comes close, but it is still not quite close enough. And I guess the reason for that is pretty obvious, because the keys on the Magic Keyboard are exact replicas of the MacBook keyboard. The size of the keys, the amount of key travel, the gaps between each key, they are all pretty much the same. Even the placement order of the shortcut keys are exactly the same on the MacBook keyboard and the Magic Keyboard. This is such a pleasure because Logitech keyboards have different shortcut keys for every single of their keyboards. So each time you switch to a new Logitech keyboard, you will have to get used to the shortcut keys, at least if you use the shortcut keys a lot like myself. As far as I can tell, there are only two differences that I've observed between the Magic Keyboard and the MacBook keyboard. The first difference is that you get full-sized function keys on the Magic Keyboard instead of the half-sized ones on the MacBook. The second difference is that you get full-sized left and right arrow keys on the Magic Keyboard instead of the half-sized ones on the MacBook. But anyway, it still takes next to no time to adjust to this keyboard if you're already a MacBook user. If you're someone who haven't used the MacBook keyboard before, I think you will also enjoy the typing experience on the Magic Keyboard as well. With the Magic Keyboard, I can type YouTube scripts and write programming code on this keyboard for hours and hours without feeling any wrist or finger fatigue. My Magic Keyboard is the Touch ID version, which costs $70 more. However, I find that the Touch ID is not always very reliable because the sensor just refuses to detect my fingerprint sometimes. I end up having to open my laptop and use the Touch ID from there instead, or I would just type in my password manually. And after I gotten my Apple Watch, this Touch ID feature became even more redundant because my MacBook allows me to approve payments from my Apple Watch, and my MacBook also auto unlocks itself when it detects that my Apple Watch is nearby. Although sometimes I still do use the Touch ID for certain apps like Google or Outlook when they are asking for my passkey, mainly through my fingerprint. There's no backlight on the Magic Keyboard, and some people would bash on this point because keyboards at this price point would usually come with a backlight feature. I personally don't use the backlights since I can type relatively accurately even without looking at my keyboard, so that's not really a deal breaker to me. As for the Magic Trackpad, there's not a lot to talk about, but I mean that in a good way. Because just like the Magic Keyboard, the Magic Trackpad is basically a carbon copy of the MacBook Trackpad. It has the same Force Touch technology that gives you haptic feedback when you click on it, and you get consistent feedback no matter which area of the trackpad you press on. Whatever gesture that you can do on the MacBook Trackpad can be done on the Magic Trackpad as well, so there's next to no adjustment period needed, just like the Magic Keyboard. Again, I've read tons of reviews on other external trackpads in the market. None of them come close to the Magic Trackpad in terms of user experience. I know that there are a number of people who bought this Magic Trackpad because they find that it is more ergonomic than a regular mouse. Some people even swear by this Magic Trackpad because it alleviated their wrist problems. Personally, I don't have any issues with the traditional mouse, and I find that I'm much more precise with a mouse than a trackpad, so I'm not really a hardcore trackpad person. Also, I do feel that my wrist and fingers feel more tired easily when using the Magic Trackpad because my muscles have to constantly work to keep my fingers hovering above the trackpad when I'm not trying to use it. With the Magic Mouse, at least my fingers get to rest on the buttons even when I'm not doing anything with it. However, I do find it to be pretty useful when it comes to zooming in and out of photos and web pages, or scrubbing the timeline during video editing. Also, the Magic Trackpad is actually larger than the trackpad on most MacBooks, and you can really feel the spaciousness when you're doing multi-finger gestures like opening up Mission Control or swiping between desktop pages. The default gesture options does feel rather limited on the Magic Trackpad, although you can open up a lot more options by using a third-party software called Better Touch Tool. But I'm not going to go into that because that topic belongs to a whole video on its own. Alright, now let's move on to the most controversial device in this trio, and that is the Magic Mouse. I actually did a review video on this mouse previously where I forced myself to use it exclusively for 3 consecutive days. Let's just say that the Magic Mouse is an acquired taste. It is not something that you want to switch to in the middle of a big video or design project because your accuracy with the mouse will be absolutely awful in the first few days. And based on my research, I found that there's actually a pretty cool reason behind this. This is primarily because of the sensor placement on the Magic Mouse. If you look at the mouse that you're using right now, it is very likely that the sensor placement is somewhere in the middle. But if I were to show you the sensor placement of the Magic Mouse, you can see that it is at the top. Based on my research, mice with higher sensor placements require more wrist movements to move the cursor. So if you're using a mouse with a lower sensor placement, you might be using more of your fingers to move the mouse instead of your wrist. Because my previous mouse was the MX Anywhere 3S, I was using a lot of finger movements. So when it comes to the Magic Mouse, I had to take a lot of time to adjust and use my wrist more. It's not really a conscious thing that you have to constantly think about when you're using the Magic Mouse. It's more like you just have to keep forcing yourself to use the Magic Mouse and it will feel more second nature over time. Another aspect worth talking about is the touch gestures on the Magic Mouse. I guess this is the thing that makes it magical because it tries to be a mouse and a trackpad at the same time. Even though there's no physical scroll wheel on this mouse, scrolling on this feels buttery smooth on Mac devices. It is smooth whether you are doing a vertical scroll on a web page or a horizontal scroll on a video editing timeline. Scrolling on the Magic Mouse feels like a 120Hz experience, whereas scrolling on any other mouse feels more like a 30 to 45Hz experience. You can also swipe left and right on the Magic Mouse to go back to a previous web page, and this gesture feels pretty intuitive as well, similar to swiping on the borders of your iPhone to go back to a previous web page. But because of how flat the profile of this mouse is, the natural grip that you will default to is the claw grip. There's practically no support on your palm, unlike something like the MX Anywhere mouse. There are some reviewers who said that their hand or fingers will cramp up as a result, but I personally haven't had that issue before. While the grip certainly doesn't feel as comfortable as the other Logitech mice that I have, I don't find it to be super bothersome. Initially, yes, because my hands feel kinda awkward holding such a slim mouse, but currently not anymore, at least not after I've been using it for about 6 months. Although all of these peripherals pair via Bluetooth, you actually need a wired connection the first time you try to pair any of them to your Mac devices. There is a braided USB-C cable included in the box for all of these devices, but it just puzzles me as to why I can't pair them wirelessly during the initial pairing. It's like the MacBook has to have some sort of handshake with the device at least once before it will remember it. Oh, and I should also mention that if you wish to pair these peripherals to another Mac computer, you'll need to forget the device on your current Mac before it becomes discoverable on your other Mac computer or iPad. It's not like the AirPods where you get seamless switching between devices the moment you try to play a music on another device. With these Magic devices, you'll need to be a bit more hands-on, I would say. Now let's talk about charging. Since November of last year, Apple has updated all of these peripherals to have USB-C ports. And yes, the charging port on the Magic Mouse is still freaking at the bottom for some reason. Because of this, the Magic Mouse is the only peripheral out of the trio that does not work while it is charging. And it is not just because of the cable getting in the way. The Magic Mouse literally switches off when you're charging it, so there's no way to outsmart it by using it at the edge of your table or something. So there is no physical workaround to get it to work while it is charging. But thankfully, they are all super low powered devices that don't require much energy, so I find myself charging them about once every 2 months, even though Apple claim that they have 1 month of battery life. All 3 of these peripherals have an aluminium chassis, which will remind you of the aluminium body on the MacBooks. The aluminium material gives them the rigidity that they need while keeping them reasonably lightweight. If you want a black Magic keyboard, you have to choose the longer keyboard with numeric keypad. Apple just doesn't sell the compact version in black. There were some comments about the black version showing fingerprints, dust, and skin all more easily than the white version, so that's something to take note. Alright, here comes the verdict. which of these magic devices are actually truly magical? Well, I would say that the Magic Keyboard is a no-brainer. The typing experience is insanely good, and if you want the same typing experience as your MacBook keyboard, it is worth forking out the extra Apple tax for it. There's nothing else that comes close to this, so it's a keyboard that I would definitely recommend. But if you do have an Apple Watch already though, I wouldn't really recommend the Touch ID version because it hasn't been the most reliable in my experience, and it costs $70 more. Unless you use your MacBook in clamshell mode all the time, then I can see why you might want the Touch ID version. As for the Magic Trackpad, I would say it's more of a nice to have, and I won't go so far as to say that it can replace your mouse. Because I think that for work that requires super precise control, a traditional mouse is still the best. And if you do game on your computer, then of course the Magic Trackpad will not be able to fully replace your mouse. Unless maybe you have ergonomics issues with a traditional mouse, then perhaps you can give the Magic Trackpad a try. But at 159 Singapore dollars, and the fact that I haven't really found very useful use cases for this Magic Trackpad, I personally wouldn't really recommend it. Lastly, for the Magic Mouse, let's just say that love at first sight isn't something that happens with it. And as much as I like the gestures that you can do on the surface of the Magic Mouse, I still find it difficult to completely get over the ergonomics of it. Although I have adjusted to the quirky handling of the Magic Mouse, I still find that it lacks the palm and finger supports that are helpful during longer video editing sessions. With the Magic Mouse, I also find that I'm not as precise as I am with the MX Anywhere 3S. I will still reach for my MX Anywhere 3S every single time if I'm trying to quickly edit a video because I'm behind schedule or something. For something that costs $99 and has a moderately steep learning curve to use effectively, I think there are much better options out there that don't require you to wrestle with the mouse right from the start. If you want to watch how I tortured myself to use the Magic Mouse for 3 days, you can watch it right over here. Alright, that's all I have for this video. I hope you found it helpful and do consider subscribing for more tech product reviews. See you in the next video. Bye bye.